A delegation of politicians and businessmen from Bahrain are visiting Israel for the first time since the Abraham Accords normalization deal was signed a few months ago. The two countries are estimating $220 million in non-defense trade alone in 2021.
Fascinated by how integrated the IT and innovation sector in Israel has been embedded in every facet of life, whether it's simple solutions on apps or technology in cars or medicine or irrigation. And I think all these could be easily adaptable into Bahrain for daily consumption, daily lifestyle.
Meanwhile, Bahrain's Industry, Commerce and Tourism Minister said in an interview on Thursday that despite the Palestinians who oppose this new deal, the Gulf Kingdom is open to importing goods from West Bank settlements.
We will treat Israeli products as Israeli products. So we have no issue with labeling or origin. And if the product conforms with our set of standards and codes, then it will be accepted and entered into Bahrain.
Okay, let's bring in Seth Frantzman. He's the founder and editor-in-chief of a new news publication called the Israel Gulf Report. Thank you, Seth, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So firstly, you've been a journalist for many years. Why did you decide to launch the Israel Gulf Report other than the obvious reasons of the Abraham Accords?
Well, because we all know that if you're a journalist, you're able to cover daily issues, but what you end up doing is you're just getting a very small slice of the cake. And I realized that it just seemed to me that we have so many different things that are going on every day in the Gulf and Israel, which is whether it's trade or high tech or culture, religion. You know, it's not just the big diplomatic visits, which of course those matter, but I think what we'll see in the future is the need to have a platform in which many other people can participate, and social media, and you can kind of help to cement and support and spotlight this blossoming relationship. And I started it as a place that people could meet and people can go. It's not just a website, it's social media, it's other things. And so hopefully it will kind of organically grow from there and become something that helps to be a kind of, let's say, a center of a web of information relating to the Israel and Gulf relations.
Well, you're obviously going to have a lot of news to write about, but let's talk about the news of today for a second. The Bahraini minister who's visiting Israel made a comment about importing goods from West Bank settlements. Do you think it's a slap in the face to the Palestinians that they're saying that they are willing to import products from West Bank settlements?
I'm not sure. I mean, certainly I think it would help the Palestinian economy if they will import different things from the West Bank. So some of them may come from Israeli settlements or be manufactured by Israelis, some of them by Palestinians. I guess they'll have to work that out. I mean, I don't know if the West Bank is really a giant center of production in terms of the types of products that Bahrain is going to want. So is Bahrain going to be importing a lot of wine from the West Bank? Maybe not. So maybe the kind of high-tech things that Bahrain wants actually are produced more in Tel Aviv. But if someone raises a question as to, yeah, but wait, was some part of that chip built over the Green Line? I suppose what the statement seemed to indicate was that no, if some portion of that product has some connection to over the Green Line, that's not going to be an issue for them.
Interesting. Okay. And, you know, the trip in general, it was quite a show they put on. It was filled with press conferences and meetings. I wonder how you think this trip is going to define or set up the future of relations between Israel and its new Gulf friends.
I think this was the second big high-profile Bahrain trip. They had the foreign minister here a few weeks ago, and now they've got the Minister of Trade and Tourism. So I think these are, of course, those would be key elements of the peace deal, right? A foreign ministry and then the trade, tourism. I think it's a good sign. It shows that Bahrain wants to be first. Bahrain wants to have very big high-level visits. What has to come next, I think, is an air traffic flights to Bahrain, because we're seeing with the UAE a lot of flights already and plans for dozens a day or something. So I think there are big question marks about what comes next. So flights would be important. Obviously, some tourism, back and forth, visa exemptions. I think those are going to be issues that have to be ironed out.
We're talking a lot about non-defense trade. I wonder when you think we're going to begin talking about defense trade and how much money will be spent in that.
It's a very good question. I was in touch a few times with the Ministry of Defense asking, because they have, of course, very strict export controls about certain things. Part of that relates to the fact that the United States and Israel do a lot of defense work together. So, Israel's Elbit or Rafael or II, they have contracts with U.S.-based companies, whether it's Lockheed or what have you. So there are going to be big question marks there. I think there's a lot of smaller companies in Israel that make things like drones or surveillance or electro-optics, which Israel is very, very good at. I would think that those companies will want to be over there. And I think the question is, when that will be public information and when the export agreements will take place. And it looks like then trade could be big. I mean, that's the generally Israel's defense companies are some of the largest in the world. We're talking about billions of dollars a year in sales. So I think you could see the Gulf, certainly there's a potential market of hundreds of millions or things in that ballpark, I would assume.
Right. Okay. Lots of interesting developments. Seth Frantzman, thank you so much.
Thank you.